The crown fit my head, but not my heart. I wore it well, perhaps too well. It glinted in the torchlight as I sat on the throne carved from obsidian and oak, watching the courtiers bow, lie, scheme. They called me Your Majesty now, with sweetened voices and sharpened knives. But I remembered who they were when I was locked in a tower, who ignored me, who mocked me, who tried to forget I existed. Now they smiled too widely, and I smiled back like a wolf in silk. I had ruled for 3 months, and already the court murmured. Not of rebellion, no, not yet. But of shifts in power. The old families didn't like losing their grip. The border provinces grumbled about taxes. And the noblewomen whispered about whether Corwin was my lover or my pawn. He was neither. And both. Corwin refused a crown, but he stood at my right like he'd been born there. He kept the lords honest, the guards loyal, and the rumors in check. He was a sword I didn't need to raise. Just polish until they saw their reflection in his steel. As for Celine, she kept her distance. She no longer played the innocent sister. She held court in the East Wing, surrounded by young knights and pretty scholars, a quieter center of influence. I let her. For now. She had not forgotten the duel, the kneeling court, or the scar I left on her shoulder. And I had not forgotten the note she left on my pillow. For now. She meant it. I knew better than to trust silence. The first crack in my empire came not from the court, but from the mines. Deep in the Silver Reach Mountains, where our kingdom drew its wealth, a tunnel collapsed. 20 men dead. 3 more missing. Sabotage, they said. I rode there myself. I had to. A queen who sends messengers instead of answers is already halfway forgotten. The journey took 5 days. Corwin came with me, of course. Mathis rode ahead with a detail of scouts. When we reached the mines, I stepped into the dust and ash, not in velvet but in riding leathers, crown left behind. The miners looked at me like I was a legend come down from marble. I let them. I stood over the broken tunnel and knelt to touch the shattered supports. Burn marks. Acid residue. This wasn't just sabotage, I said. This was foreign magic. Corwin cursed under his breath. The Eastern clans? No, I said. Something worse. That night, a surviving miner brought me a pouch of strange powder they found buried near the wreckage. It shimmered like crushed obsidian. I held it to the fire and watched it hiss. It wasn't from our kingdom. It wasn't even from this continent. And that terrified me more than I let them see. We rode back at once. The message I drafted for the court was simple: we are under threat. Prepare. Fortify. Trust only those whose names you would die for. Some scoffed. Others obeyed. Celine sent me a single message: do you see it now? The empire was never just ours. She knew. She always knew. And now the pieces were moving again. I summoned the council. Laid out the evidence. This wasn't rebellion. This wasn't greed. This was foreign alchemy. Someone wants our kingdom weak. Who? One of the old generals asked. I don't know yet, I said. But I intend to find out. And then the second blow landed. A letter. Sealed in black wax. No crest. No name. Inside, a single line. The blood you spilled in the duel was not hers to give. Corwin read it beside me. They're saying Celine was protected, he said. That by drawing her blood, you awakened something. I met his eyes. A curse? He shook his head. Or a claim. I burned the letter. But its words stayed in my mind. That night, I dreamed of a throne carved not from wood, but from bones. Of a shadow wearing my sister's face, whispering, you stole what was promised. Now something comes to take it back. I woke before dawn. Alone. The fire was low. My heartbeat was not. I rose, stepped out into the corridor, and found Mathis already there. You felt it too, he said. Something's coming. Yes, I whispered. And this time, we're not fighting each other. The court was mine. The crown was mine. But the war coming for me would not care for titles. Only blood. I called a meeting before the sun rose. Not the full council. Not the lords who liked to hear themselves talk or the ladies who feigned ignorance while counting alliances like coin. I summoned only those who had something to lose if the kingdom fell: Corwin, Mathis, General Avon, and a silent woman named Liz who ran our shadow network and rarely spoke above a whisper. I showed them the letter. The powder. The burn marks from the mines. This isn't rebellion, I said. It's a message. From who? Avon asked. We've crushed every known faction that would dare threaten the crown. Liz finally spoke, her voice low and cold. Not every faction. Just the ones we could see. I turned to her. What do you know? She said a scroll on the table. A map. Not one from our libraries. Not one I'd ever seen before. This came from one of my spies in the old capital, she said. It's a trade route. Dead lands. Abandoned ports. Forgotten cities. Until last month, nothing moved there. Now, caravans. Armed ones. I leaned over the map. The markings were small, coded, but I could follow them. Lines stretching beyond our borders, curving like veins into the heart of the forgotten empire. This land was cursed, Corwin said. The last time we sent scouts, none returned. It was cursed, Liz agreed. But now someone is lifting that curse. And whatever is rising there has magic older than ours. Silence fell. I felt it in my teeth, the pull of something ancient, bitter, and watching. I want a detachment sent, I said. 5 riders. Quiet. Fast. I want eyes inside that land. And if they don't return? Avon asked. Then we seal the border. And we prepare for war. I dismissed them with orders and contingency plans, but my thoughts drifted elsewhere. To Celine. She'd known something. Her letter wasn't warning, it was taunting. She had seen more during her absence than she let on. And now she was watching me scramble while she played the obedient princess. I found her in the East Gardens, where she always went when she wanted to be seen as harmless. She was trimming roses. Always roses. I walked up behind her. Why didn't you tell me? She didn't turn. About what? The foreign powder. The cursed land's awakening. The threats you knew were coming. Because you wouldn't have listened, she said. You think listening is weakness. And you think secrets are strength. She clipped a rose and finally faced me. You rule well, Alira. But ruling isn't surviving. And surviving is what I do best. You think I won't survive this? I think you're fighting it like it's a game of court, she said. It's not. It's older than our names, older than our bloodlines. You think it wants your crown? It wants your soul. Then let it try. I turned to leave, but she called after me. You dreamed it, didn't you? I froze. The throne of bones. My face in the dark. Slowly, I turned back. She was watching me now, eyes unreadable. I dreamed it too, she said. But in mine, you're not the one wearing the crown. That night, the first rider I sent to the cursed lands returned. Alone. Bleeding. He collapsed before the throne, whispering words I barely understood. It walks beneath the ash, the red-eyed one, not dead, not living. I knelt beside him. His eyes rolled back. What did you see? I asked. His lips trembled. A face, carved from yours, but twisted. It called itself, the rightful queen. Then he died. And the fire behind the throne flickered with cold blue light, as if something had heard him speak. I stood slowly. Mathis, I said. Summon the court. Why? He asked. Because something's coming for my throne, I said. And this time, I'm going to meet it on the battlefield it chose. The court assembled by nightfall, though many grumbled at the hour. Nobles in gold-threaded robes and ministers with ink-stained fingers filed into the throne room, yawning behind silk sleeves. They expected some petty announcement, a new law, another marriage decree, a ceremonial gesture meant to distract them from their failing bribes and lost leverage. They didn't expect to find a corpse laid at the base of my throne. I stood over it, hands clean but eyes fierce. The scout had been wrapped in a ceremonial shroud, the Averill crest embroidered in silver. He died in service, and I would make sure every soul in this court understood what his death meant. He was one of 5 sent to the borderlands, I said. The only one to return. And he brought back a message. I held up the blood-stained parchment he had carried. Written in a jagged, scrawled hand, your crown was forged from silence. I am the scream beneath it. I am the true heir. The room fell into stunned stillness. Even the old lords, hardened and power-drunk, paled. This is a threat, Lord Breville said. A mad one, Lady Huron added. No, I replied. This is a declaration. I turned to Corwin and Mathis. Show them. They unfurled the map Liz had given us, routes marked with new movement, ancient lands breathing again. We are not alone, I said. The cursed lands are awakening. Someone, or something, has laid claim to my throne. And they will not stop at words. What do you propose? Lord Breville asked, voice shaking. War. No, I said. Not yet. I propose we prepare. We lock our gates. We train our troops. We root out the loyalists who would turn at the first whisper of a better offer. And if they're already among us? Huron asked. I looked at Celine then. She stood in the back of the hall, cloaked and quiet. Watching. I didn't answer Huron. I let the silence speak. Afterward, the court dispersed in chaos, whispering of curses and walking shadows. Only a few remained behind, Corwin, Mathis, and Celine. You planned this, Celine said to me as the last noble left. You wanted them to see you as the only one who could stand against the dark. I am the only one, I replied. And you? I'm the only one who understands what it really is. I stepped down from the dais, approaching her slowly. Then tell me. It's not just an enemy, she said. It's a mirror. A reflection of what we could have become. What we might still become. A monster? A queen who doesn't bleed, she said. A crown that feeds on the soul instead of the heart. That's not who I am. It could be. If you keep chasing shadows with fire. I looked to Corwin. How long until the army is ready? 2 weeks, if we push the conscripts. A month if we want them trained. We don't have a month. I looked back at Celine. You said this thing wants our soul. Then it's after the magic in our blood. She nodded. It's older than the crown. Older than the tower they locked you in. That wasn't punishment, it was protection. You weren't cursed. You were sealed. Her words rang through me like a blade drawn too fast. My hands curled into fists. Then we break that seal. And we face whatever was buried with it. You don't even know what it is, she said. No, I replied. But it knows me. That night, I stood alone before the great mirror in my chambers. The one that had once belonged to my mother. I stared into it, searching for the flaw, the crack, the shadow behind my reflection. And then I saw it. For just a breath. My face, but wrong. The eyes too pale, the smile too wide. A crown of bones resting on my brow. It blinked at me. Then vanished. I didn't scream. I didn't flinch. I simply whispered to my own reflection, come and try. Because I was done waiting for the war. I was going to hunt it first. I didn't sleep. I took no meal. I called for the old records, the ones kept in the vault beneath the palace, sealed with chains and blessed with salt. Only the High Queen could open them. And I was her. The guards hesitated when I arrived at the iron door, as if something inside still breathed. The priest who kept the keys looked at me with sunken eyes. There are truths in there that should remain buried, he warned. Then why are they written? I asked. He didn't answer, just unlocked the vault and stepped back. I descended alone. The stairs spiraled downward, the air growing colder with every step. My torch flickered but never went out. That was the first sign. Whatever haunted this place didn't fear light, it watched it. The vault opened into a chamber of stone lined with ancient scrolls and bound tomes, their titles etched in dead languages. I didn't need a translator. I had spent years in a tower with nothing but books and bitterness. I found it on the 4th shelf, behind a false wall of prayer texts. A book wrapped in black silk, warm to the touch. The Binding of Queens. I unwrapped it and opened to the first page. There, in red ink, was an image of the throne I now sat on, and beside it, 2 women. One crowned in gold. The other crowned in bone. I turned the pages slowly, reading of an ancient pact made long before our kingdom was born. A bloodline of power, split in 2. One child to rule the day. The other to sleep beneath the earth, guarding the shadow. If both ever lived at once, the balance would fracture. A kingdom would rise, and so would a hunger. Celine and I. We were the prophecy. We had always been. And now the hunger stirred. I closed the book and held it tight to my chest. It pulsed once, like a heartbeat. I didn't return to the palace immediately. I went instead to the Temple of Ash, the oldest ruin on the edge of the capital. Corwin met me there, already waiting. You found it, he said. I nodded. The curse wasn't on me. It was on the throne. It needs 1 ruler. Not 2. Then what happens if both live? It chooses. He looked at me then, his gaze heavy. And if it doesn't choose you? Then I make it. We returned to the palace just before dawn. Celine was waiting in my chambers, seated in my chair, holding the very same book. I found my copy, she said. Did yours end with blood? No, I said. Mine ends with fire. She stood and crossed to me, I searching mine. You know it won't stop unless one of us gives it what it wants. And what does it want? She touched my chest gently. You. Her hand was warm. Familiar. And suddenly I saw her not as my rival, not even as my sister, but as the mirror I had been fighting to break since the day they locked me away. It wants to consume me, I whispered. But it can't if I offer myself first. What are you saying? I stepped back. There's a ritual in the book. An inversion. A way to bind the hunger not into one of us, but into the throne itself. A curse sealed into stone, not flesh. You'd sacrifice your magic, she said. You'd never be able to call on it again. I'd still be queen, I said. But I wouldn't be the weapon it wants. And if it fails? I looked out the window. Then it ends with us. Either way. That night, I gathered the court. Again. I was asking them to believe in more than power. I was asking them to believe in prophecy. In ancient hunger. In something older than kings. Some laughed. Others begged me to step down. But I silenced them with one sentence. If you think I fear darkness, I said, you've forgotten who I was before I wore this crown. And then, before them all, I knelt on the stone floor and carved the first sigil with my own blood. The ritual had begun. And the throne, my throne, started to whisper my name in a voice not my own. The whispering didn't stop. Not when the court fled the chamber in fear, not when Corwin stepped between me and the throne with a sword in hand, not even when Celine placed her palm on the sigil and whispered the counterverse. The voice spoke through the cracks in the stone, through the very air, slipping beneath my skin like frost. Alira, you were mine first. I didn't flinch. I pressed the blade to my palm again and bled a second sigil onto the floor. The throne shuddered. Dust fell from the vaulted ceiling. It's resisting, Celine said. Of course it is, I replied. It's been waiting for centuries to wear us. It doesn't want to be sealed. Then seal it quickly, Corwin growled. Before it chooses. The ritual was ancient, older than the kingdom. It demanded balance, light and shadow, air and mirror. Celine and I stood on either side of the throne, each holding the binding tome, blood soaking the pages. We chanted in a tongue neither of us had ever been taught but both somehow knew. The hunger screamed. Not aloud, but inside. It clawed at my thoughts, shoved memories into my mind like daggers. The tower. The silence. The cold. The day I watched Celine ride away in a golden carriage while I wept behind iron bars. You were forgotten. You were nothing. I know, I whispered. And I made myself everything. I spoke the final line of the ritual. The throne cracked down the middle. A scream, not mine, not Celine's, echoed through the chamber like thunder breaking bone. The stone beneath our feet trembled. And then the light went out. Just for a breath. When it returned, the throne sat silent. Still split. Still whole. A jagged crack ran through its center like a scar. The voice was gone. I staggered back, dizzy. My blood had stopped glowing. My veins felt hollow. Is it done? Corwin asked, catching me. I don't know, I said. But it's quiet. Celine looked pale, her hands shaking. We bound it. Not destroyed it. Then we watch it, I said. And if it wakes again, we bury it in fire. We didn't celebrate. There was no feast, no fanfare. Only silence. The kind that weighs more than war. In the days that followed, I noticed things. My magic was gone. I couldn't light a flame with a word or twist air to my will. Celine still had hers, dimmed, but alive. That was the cost. I had bound the hunger into the throne and given it mine to keep it sleeping. And still, I wore the crown. Not because of power. Because of choice. Corwin remained by my side. He watched me more closely now, like he feared I might unravel. You did something no one else would have dared, he said one night. You cut yourself away from power and still ruled. That's what queens do, I said. They bleed for the kingdom. Not all of them, he replied. Just the good ones. I leaned into him then, let myself rest against something warm and real. It's not over, is it? No, he said. But it's yours now. All of it. Days later, I returned to the vault beneath the palace. Alone. I found the throne's old ledger, the one written not in ink, but in names. Hundreds of them. The queens who had come before. The ones who had bled. The ones who had disappeared. At the very bottom, a new name had been etched in blood that wasn't mine. Alira Averill, the one who stayed. I closed the book. Walked up the stairs. And stepped into the light. I was no longer a girl in a tower. I was no longer the weapon of fate. I was Alira, the queen who chose. And in my silence, I had created something greater than fear. I had created a future. The hunger was gone, but the aftermath lingered like smoke. The court never spoke of the ritual aloud, but it hovered behind every glance, every hushed conversation in the corridors. Some nobles began treating me like a holy relic. Others like a walking curse. They didn't know which scared them more, a queen who bound ancient power, or a queen who no longer had any. I watched it all in silence. I let them talk. Let them wonder. Fear was still a crown, even if my magic no longer pulsed beneath my skin. But I didn't need magic to rule. I had power in other forms, in the loyalty of my guards, in the treaties I reforged, in the stability I restored. Still, something inside me had changed. I no longer felt things the same way. Food tasted flat. Music sounded distant. My dreams were quiet now, too quiet, as if the part of me that once lit with fire had been buried alongside the hunger. Celine noticed. Of course she did. She came to me in the middle of the night, uninvited, cloaked in her usual shadow of mystery. You're unraveling, she said. I'm ruling, I replied. Don't confuse the two. You're not sleeping. Neither are you. She sat beside me on the edge of my bed. It's still there, isn't it? Beneath the throne. Bound, I said. But not destroyed. She stared ahead. And if it wakes again? I looked at her, truly looked. Then it won't have me. And it won't have you. It'll find no one left to wear. You really would burn it all down before you let it win. That's what queens do. She didn't argue. She just nodded, then left without another word. The next morning, I awoke to a knock at my chamber doors. Mathis stood there, pale. You need to see this. He led me to the outer wall. A scout's body had been found impaled on the pikes. Not a clean kill. Not a political message. Ritualistic. A sigil was carved into his chest. One I recognized from the book in the vault. But this one was inverted. Corwin arrived just behind me, his sword already drawn. Someone's copying the hunger's markings. No, I said. They're calling it back. I turned to Mathis. Find out who entered the vault since the ritual. Search every servant, every priest. Quietly. Yes, Your Majesty. And shut down the archives. Lock them. Nobody gets in without my seal. That night, I called Liz to my study. I need your network, I said. I need to know who in this palace is still loyal to the hunger. She nodded once. I already have names. She handed me a list. I recognized 3 of them. 2 had served my father. 1 had served me. I burned the list after reading it. Remove them, I said. Discreetly. And if they resist? Make it look like justice. Corwin watched me from across the room as I gave the order. You're colder now, he said. You're not wrong, I replied. But if they're calling it back, I can't afford warmth. He crossed to me, took my hand. Then let me keep it for you. Just enough to remind you who you are. I didn't cry. I hadn't since the ritual. But I held onto his hand just a moment longer than necessary. Because I needed to remember I was still human. Even if the throne wanted me to forget. That night, I dreamed again. Not of the bone-crowned queen. Not of the tower. I dreamed of a door beneath the palace. One that hadn't been there before. It pulsed with light, red, like fire. Blue, like ice. And behind it, something breathed. Something waiting. I woke with a name on my lips. A name I had never heard, but somehow knew. Delmora. I didn't know if it was a warning or a summons. But I knew this, something beneath the palace had stirred. The ritual had bound the hunger to the throne. But someone had found a way to knock on the door. And if they opened it, I wouldn't be the only one they came for. Delmora. The name haunted me for days. It wasn't in any records. Not in the vault, not in the temple texts, not even among the whispered heresies buried by my ancestors. I asked Mathis, and he came back pale. No mention. Not even as a myth. I asked Celine, and she froze. You heard it in a dream? She asked. No, I said. I woke with it in my mouth. Her silence told me everything I needed to know. She'd heard it too. That night, I descended to the palace catacombs. Alone. I left my crown behind, stripped away the velvet layers, and brought only a dagger, a torch, and the iron key that opened the forgotten stairwell beneath the old queen's chamber. The door wasn't locked. It hadn't been touched in generations. And still, the stone steps were warm. Not from sun, not from fire, but from something deeper. Something alive. I reached the bottom and found the door. Just like in my dream. Smooth black stone. A pulse behind it, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of a sleeping god. There were no handles. No hinges. Just symbols, etched in a circle, old Averill runes mixed with something older, something wrong. One glowed faintly red. The others flickered. I didn't touch it. I simply whispered the name. Delmora. The stone pulsed. Just once. Then it went still. I backed away slowly and sealed the stairwell behind me with salt and steel. Whatever lay beyond that door, it wasn't meant to wake. Not yet. I returned to the court with a smile and ice in my veins. I ordered Lys to triple the guards in the eastern corridors. I replaced the high priest. I began assembling a second secret council, people who feared me more than they craved favor. The kind who survived not by rising, but by never being seen. Because now I had a new war to fight. Not against a foreign army. Not even against the hunger. But against a name. A force that had waited through dynasties, watching from behind stone and shadow. Corwin saw the change in me. "What did you find down there?" he asked one night, alone in my chambers. "A warning," I said. "And a lie." "What lie?" "That it's over." I turned to him. The ritual didn't end it. It just slowed it down. Delmora is the name it had before the hunger. Before the throne. Before us. So it's coming back? "No," I said. It never left. The next day, the palace priesthood announced a solar eclipse. The first in a century. The skies would go black for 1 hour, and tradition demanded the queen observe it in silence from the Temple of Ascension. I agreed. Not because of tradition. Because I knew whoever had carved the sigil into that dead scout's chest would use the eclipse as cover. And I wanted them to try. I stood in the temple alone, draped in white, the crown on my head like a weight made of secrets. The sky darkened slowly. The air grew cold. The wind stopped. And then I heard the door open behind me. Soft steps. Not a guard. Not Corwin. Not Celine. I didn't turn. "You came," I said. A voice answered. Low. Familiar. Female. "You were always meant to call me." I turned. And saw myself. Or something like me. Pale skin. Black eyes. A crown of bone and thorns. "Delmora," I said. She smiled. "You were the key, Alira. And the lock. But you sealed me wrong. I sealed the hunger. I am the hunger. I am the throne. I am what your blood was born from." "Why come now?" I asked. "Because the eclipse is silence. And silence is when I am strongest." I reached for my dagger, but she raised a hand. "No blade will stop me. But a choice might." "What choice?" "Let go. Give me the throne. Let me wear your face and rule as you." "They'll never know." "They'll know," I said. "Because you'll never bleed for them like I did." "Then I'll take it," she whispered. "Not now. But soon." She stepped back into the shadows. Her form flickered. The temple door never moved. And when the sun returned, I was alone again. But the warmth never came back. I stood there long after the eclipse ended, the weight of my crown burning against my scalp. Delmora had seen the light. Now she only needed to dim it. The eclipse left more than shadows behind. That night, 5 children across the capital woke screaming from the same dream, of a woman with no eyes offering them a crown of teeth. Their parents reported it to the palace, fearing plague or witchery. I knew better. Delmora had begun planting her roots. Dreams were just the first step. Then came the frost. The harvest in the southern province spoiled overnight. Wheat turned black, fruit withered, and the livestock refused to eat. The priests claimed bad omens. The farmers claimed curses. The scouts I sent returned with reports of strange footprints in the ash, bare, human-shaped, but too long. Corwin wanted to ride out and face it himself. "You can't rule a kingdom you won't protect," he said. "You think I'm hiding?" I replied. "I'm protecting what matters, strategy." But he saw through me. He always did. I wasn't afraid of battle. I was afraid of her. Of what I'd seen in that temple. Of what I still saw every night behind my eyelids. Delmora hadn't just shown me her face. She'd shown me mine, what I could become if I gave in. If I let the hunger back in. If I wore the crown without heart. Celine offered a different kind of warning. She came to me late, as usual, draped in quiet and sharpened grace. "You're slipping," she said. "You're beginning to rule with fear. Fear keeps them alive. It also makes them run." "Let them," I snapped. "Let the cowards leave. I only need those who stay." She stared at me. That's exactly what Delmora would say. The words stung. Not because they weren't true, but because I had thought them myself more than once. Was I becoming what I sealed? Was I carrying her in me like a splinter? I needed answers. I returned to the vault. This time with Celine. We brought no guards, no witnesses. Only blood and fire. I opened the binding book again. Skimmed past the prophecy, the rituals, the curses. And found a final page that hadn't been there before. A mirror spell. Not for binding. For transfer. Should the throne take root in flesh, it may be drawn out, not killed, not banished, but traded. One vessel for another. "You can't mean to use this," Celine said. "It would destroy you." "Maybe," I said. "But it would also destroy her. It's not worth it." "It is," I said. "If it keeps the kingdom from becoming hers." She reached for my hand. "You are the kingdom now. If you fall, so does it." I looked down at the page. The ink glowed faintly red. The same color as the sigil on the scout's chest. Then I need to become something she can't consume. And what is that? Not a queen, I said. A legend. Over the next week, I prepared in secret. I began making quiet exits. Training my council to act without me, installing leaders who didn't need my voice to obey, shifting power without anyone realizing it. If I failed, they would survive. The kingdom would survive. I wrote letters to Corwin I never meant to send. I drafted a royal will that no one would read unless I died. And then, on the 7th night, I returned to the temple alone. The air was already cold. The door already open. She was waiting. "You came," Delmora said, smiling with my face. "I never left," I replied. "I've always been where you were weakest." She tilted her head. "You mean kind?" "No. I mean human." I stepped into the center of the temple and drew the sigil with ashen wine. Not blood. This ritual was not about sacrifice. It was about surrender. She watched. Curious. Amused. "You think you can seal me again?" she asked. "I don't want to seal you," I said. "I want to hold you still." I raised my hands and whispered the invocation. The mirror spell ignited. Light split between us like a blade. And for one breathless second, I saw her tremble. Because for the first time, she realized I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to contain. She lunged. I met her. Fire exploded between us. The temple walls shook. And the world went white. I woke in darkness. Not the kind you feel when night falls, but the kind that presses against your lungs like stone. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. My body was weightless and heavy at once, suspended in a void where time didn't pass. But I could feel her. Delmora. Inside me. Wrapped around my bones like ivy, whispering promises I refused to hear. "You can rest now," she murmured. "I'll wear your name well." I pushed back. Not with magic, I had none left. But with memory. I remembered the tower, the ache of silence. I remembered the court, the power in my voice when I took back what was stolen. I remembered Corwin's eyes the first time he saw me not as a prisoner, but as a queen. And I remembered the taste of blood when I drew that final sigil. The spell had not failed. It was working. Slowly. It hadn't destroyed her, it had pulled her into me, trapped her in a vessel of my choosing. But that vessel was me. And now the battle wasn't for the throne. It was for my soul. I clawed upward, toward the light I remembered, toward breath, toward heat. I screamed, but only inside. Until, at last, I heard a voice. Corwin's. "She's alive," he said. "She's breathing." A hand gripped mine. I held it like it was the only real thing left in the world. My eyes opened. I was back in the temple, surrounded by broken sigils and scorched stone. Celine knelt at my side, face streaked with soot. "You nearly didn't come back," she whispered. I nearly didn't want to, I said. She was so quiet in the dark. But you did, Corwin said. You chose. I sat up slowly, pain crackling through every joint. Is she gone? No, Celine said. But she's sealed. Inside you. I looked down at my hands. They trembled faintly, not with fear, but with something else. Residue. The hunger still breathed beneath my skin. But it was bound now. Caged by will. Then it's done, I said. For now, Celine replied, echoing the words she once left on my pillow. I laughed once, just once, and rose to my feet. The kingdom had not fallen. The court had not turned. I had walked into the mouth of the void and returned not with a crown of bone, but with blood still mine. In the weeks that followed, the land healed. The harvest returned. The dreams stopped. And my name was spoken not with fear, but with awe. Alira the bound. Alira the unbroken. I never wore the same crown again. I had one forged from iron and obsidian, etched with the sigils that sealed her inside me. A reminder. To the court. To myself. She still whispers sometimes. In moments of silence. In my dreams. When I hesitate. She offers me power. Eternal rule. A world built from fear. But I turn away. Every time. Because I have something she never did. People worth bleeding for. A kingdom worth saving. And a heart that knows power means nothing if it can't be laid down. One evening, Corwin joined me on the balcony. It's over, he said. For now, I replied. But if she ever returns? I turned to him. Then she'll find me ready. Again. He nodded. And you won't be alone. I took his hand. No. I never was. The stars above us pulsed quietly, not with hunger, but with peace. And for the first time in a long, long time, I closed my eyes, and slept. Not because I had to. But because I could.